somewhere between the ages of 20 and 60, a person starts noticing something strange. It becomes a little harder for them to fall asleep. Nothing serious, just a bit of insomnia, the kind anyone might attribute to stress. Weeks later, it's no longer just a bit, it's almost none. They sleep for fragments of minutes, never a full hour. Their heart starts racing for no apparent reason. They sweat excessively, their blood pressure rises, they begin to lose their balance while walking. Months later, they don't sleep at all. Nothing. Not even a single minute of real sleep. Their family starts to notice something else. It isn't just fatigue. It's a rapid and visible form of deterioration, as if several years of aging were compressed into a few weeks. They lose weight for no apparent reason. Their gaze changes. Their hands start shaking uncontrollably. And here is the part that will take away your peace of mind for the rest of this video. That person, unable to ever sleep again, dies. An average of 18 months after the symptoms begin. It's called fatal familial insomnia. It's a real genetic disease, extremely rare and so far incurable. And the reason it kills isn't a virus, a tumor, or an infection. It kills because it deprives the brain of something it needs to do every single night, without exception, to keep functioning. What exactly does the brain do while you sleep that is so vital that its total absence can kill you in a year and a half? That's what we are going to break down piece by piece over the next few minutes. And in the end, we will return to this disease to understand exactly how it destroys you. What your brain does not do when you sleep. Let's start by dismantling the idea that most of us hold, without even realizing it, about sleep. That sleeping is turning off the brain, a pause button for the next day. It's completely false. When electrodes are attached to your head while you sleep, a test called an electroencephalogram, or EEG, what is seen isn't silence. It's intense, organized electrical activity with specific patterns that change roughly every 90 minutes, as if the brain were following a precise script. During certain phases of sleep, some regions of the brain are almost as active, or even more active, than when you are fully awake. What changes isn't that the brain turns off, it's that it changes tasks. It stops processing the outside world and begins internal work that, literally, it cannot do in any other way while you are awake. Think of it this way. Imagine an office open to the public during the day. While the doors are open and customers come and go, it's impossible to thoroughly reorganize the files, clean every corner, or calmly review which documents are no longer needed. That office needs to close its doors to the public to do that internal work properly. Your brain works the exact same way. While awake, constantly responding to external stimuli, sounds, lights, decisions, conversations, it cannot dedicate its full resources to maintenance tasks that can only be done behind closed doors. Sleep is not an absence of brain activity. It's the brain closing shop to the public to perform, behind closed doors, the most important work of the entire day. Every night you sleep, your brain goes through a cycle that repeats 4 to 6 times, each lasting approximately 90 minutes. That cycle has different phases. At first, you enter light sleep, from which you can easily wake up at any sound. Minutes later, you drop into deep sleep, the phase where your breathing slows down, your temperature drops, and you become practically impossible to wake up. And after that, you enter a completely different phase, known as REM sleep, short for rapid eye movement, where your eyes move rapidly beneath closed eyelids, and the vast majority of your dreams occur. These 3 phases are not interchangeable. Each performs a specific job that no other phase can replace. And here is what most people don't know. If you miss even one of these phases night after night, even while getting the same total number of hours of sleep, your brain starts failing at very specific tasks, which we'll examine one by one. There's also a detail that few people know about how these phases are distributed throughout the night. They are not distributed evenly. In the first half of the night, Your brain prioritizes deep sleep, the phase of physical cleanup and recovery. In the second half, the scale tilts toward REM sleep, the phase of dreaming and emotional processing, with increasingly longer periods as morning approaches. That means something very concrete. If you go to bed late and sleep few hours, you don't simply get less overall sleep. You disproportionately lose the very phase you need most at the end of the night, the one that processes your emotions and organizes your creativity, while keeping the initial phase relatively intact. Two people sleeping the same total number of hours can end up with completely different brain experiences, depending on which part of the night they lost that time. This entire nightly cycle doesn't happen by chance. It is controlled by a tiny structure, the size of a grain of rice, located in the hypothalamus, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That small group of neurons acts as the master clock for your entire body, synchronizing virtually every organ, not just the brain, to a roughly 24-hour cycle. The most powerful signal that clock uses to tell what time it is comes from a surprisingly simple place: the light entering your eyes. When night falls and light decreases, the brain starts releasing melatonin, the hormone that signals to the rest of the body that it's time to prepare for sleep. When we expose our eyes to intense artificial light, like a phone screen held inches from our face, that internal clock receives a confusing signal. It thinks it's still daytime and delays the release of melatonin, pushing the entire sleep cycle later than your body actually needs. This is not a minor coincidence. It is the specific reason why so many people today feel tired all day long, yet completely awake as soon as they crawl into bed holding their phone. Furthermore, this internal clock doesn't just control when you feel sleepy. It also regulates body temperature, the release of cortisol, the hormone associated with stress and morning energy, and even the time of day when your body best processes food. That is why working night shifts long-term or crossing multiple time zones repeatedly doesn't just leave you sleepy. It literally desynchronizes an entire system of biological processes that depend on that master clock knowing, with precision, what time it is. The cleaning shift. During the deepest phase of sleep, something occurs that science took centuries to fully discover. Your brain washes itself. In 2012, neuroscientist Maike Nedergaard and her team at the University of Rochester discovered a previously unknown system, which they named the glymphatic system. It functions as a sort of internal plumbing network. Cerebrospinal fluid circulates through tiny spaces around the brain's blood vessels, washing away the metabolic waste that neurons produce all day while working. A year later, in 2013, the same team published something even more striking. This cleaning system is up to 10 times more active while you sleep than while you are awake. During deep sleep, the space between your neurons literally expands by up to 60%, leaving more room for fluid to circulate and sweep away the accumulated waste. Among that waste is a protein called beta-amyloid. That same protein, when it chronically accumulates in the brain over years, is directly linked to the development of Alzheimer's disease. To understand how dramatic this difference is, consider the original experiment conducted on mice. Researchers observed that the glymphatic system became up to 10 times more active during sleep than during wakefulness. Nedergaard summarized it with a simple analogy. The brain, she said, has only limited energy available and must choose between two distinct functional states: being awake and attentive to the outside world, or being asleep and cleaning. It cannot do both at the same time with the same efficiency. It's like throwing a party at your house. You can't thoroughly clean while the guests are still inside. You need them to leave first. Put another way, every time you sleep poorly, your brain is left with more uncollected waste than it should have, and that waste doesn't disappear on its own. Brain cleaning isn't the only thing that happens during deep sleep. It's also the physical repair workshop. It is also the time when your entire body enters physical reconstruction mode. During this phase, the pituitary gland releases most of your daily growth hormone, responsible for repairing muscle tissue, regenerating cells, and, in children and adolescents, supporting much of their bone growth. It is, literally, the reason why chronic sleep deprivation during childhood can affect a person's entire physical development. At the same time, your immune system uses these hours to produce and release cytokines, a type of protein that helps fight infection and inflammation. Sleeping poorly in the days leading up to exposure to a virus measurably reduces your body's ability to generate an effective immune response, very likely one of the main reasons behind that familiar feeling of getting sick right when you're most stressed and sleeping poorly. In other words, your body treats sleep as its scheduled maintenance window. And like any system whose maintenance window you cut back time and time again, it eventually begins to fail in ways that are felt, but that we almost never connect to the real cause. While the cleaning system is at work, a second, equally critical process occurs in parallel. Your brain literally reorganizes the day's memories. During the day, new information you learn is stored temporarily in a structure that acts like a temporary inbox. During deep sleep, the brain replays that information over and over, at a speed far faster than you originally experienced it, transferring it to the cerebral cortex where it is stored much more permanently. It is literally a nightly file migration. What you learn that day about a new language, a physical skill, or an important piece of work data gets consolidated during those hours of deep sleep. If you interrupt that phase night after night, it's not that you forget everything all at once. It's something more subtle and frustrating. The knowledge remains half-saved, fragile, and easy to lose over time. Studies on motor learning, for example, learning a new sequence of finger movements similar to playing an instrument, show something striking. People who practice a sequence and then sleep measurably improve their performance the next day, even without practicing a single extra minute. The brain keeps training in silence while the body rests. This is one of the reasons why sleeping on a problem before making an important decision isn't just an empty popular saying. You literally give your brain time to reorganize relevant information before you need to use it. That's why pulling an all-nighter before an exam without sleep is probably one of the worst strategies in existence. You're asking your brain to file information away without ever giving it the process it needs to truly save it. The nightly theater. And then comes the strangest, most fascinating, and even more mysterious phase of the entire cycle: REM sleep. During this phase, your brain activity spikes to levels nearly identical to when you are awake. Your eyes move rapidly back and forth under your closed eyelids. And here, in this phase, is where the vast majority of your dreams occur. Those strange, vivid, sometimes absurd narratives that your brain constructs every night without your conscious control. Why do we dream? Science still doesn't have a fully conclusive answer, but there is solid evidence for at least two real functions. First, REM sleep seems to help consolidate the emotional aspect of memories, not just the factual part. Second, and even more intriguing, during this phase, the brain seems to combine information in novel ways, almost as if it were testing connections it had never tried while you were awake. That process of testing new connections isn't a simple academic curiosity. It has more than once produced results that changed history. The safety switch. But there is a detail about REM sleep that, when you think about it calmly, is genuinely unsettling. During this phase, your body becomes practically paralyzed. It's not an accident or a glitch. It's a deliberate safety mechanism. While your brain generates images so vivid they are sometimes indistinguishable from reality, running, fighting, falling into a void, a structure in the brainstem actively blocks the signals that would normally move your muscles. In simple terms, your brain disconnects you from motor control so you don't physically act out what you are dreaming. It's a remarkably intelligent system. And like any safety system, it sometimes fails. When the switch fails, when that blocking mechanism stays active a bit too long and extends past REM sleep, into the exact moment of waking, something happens that millions of people have experienced at least once in their lives: sleep paralysis. You wake up completely conscious, sometimes even with your eyes open, but your body remains paralyzed, as if the switch hasn't yet received the command to turn off. The sensation is so disturbing that for centuries, different cultures explained it with demons, spirits, or presences sitting on the chest of the sufferer. What makes the experience so terrifying isn't just immobility. It's that, in many cases, the brain continues producing fragments of dreamlike activity while the person is already aware of the real environment. This can generate vivid hallucinations, the feeling of a strange presence in the room, or pressure on the chest, all while the person rationally knows they are awake and cannot move. It is, in a sense, the brain trapped between two states that normally should never overlap. And the exact opposite phenomenon also exists. When that muscle blockage doesn't activate sufficiently during REM sleep, the body actually moves in response to what the brain is dreaming. In its mildest form, this can explain why some people talk or gesture while asleep. In its most extreme forms, documented in real sleep disorders, people have walked, screamed, or even acted out complete, violent movements while still fast asleep, with no memory whatsoever of having done so upon waking. Sleepwalking, curiously, does not occur during REM sleep, but during deep sleep, a phase where the body retains its ability to move, but consciousness has not yet fully turned on. It is, in essence, the body awake and the brain still asleep, the exact inverse combination of sleep paralysis. Two failures of the same system. One locks you inside your own body. The other sends you walking without your consent. The Idea Workshop. Let's return to that strange ability of REM sleep to combine information in novel ways, because it has consequences that go far beyond mere anecdotes. Russian chemist Dmitry Mendeleev had been trying for some time to organize the known chemical elements according to a logical pattern, without being able to find the right order. According to his own account, the complete structure of what we know today as the periodic table presented itself to him, already organized, in a dream. German chemist August Kekulé had spent months trying to understand the molecular structure of benzene. He later recounted that the answer, a ring-shaped structure, appeared to him in a dream image, almost like a visual revelation he hadn't managed to reach through waking reasoning. And in music, one of the most renowned songwriters of the 20th century publicly shared that the complete melody of one of his most famous songs came to him entirely in a dream, so clear that upon waking, he rushed to record it before forgetting it, convinced for days that it must have been someone else's tune he had heard somewhere before. We are not talking about magic. We are talking about a brain that, freed from the sequential logic it uses while awake, tests combinations of information that would otherwise never have occurred to it. During the day, your conscious mind tends to quickly dismiss ideas that seem absurd or out of place because it needs to stay focused on immediate reality. During REM sleep, that filter relaxes, and the brain can allow connections that, in a waking state, it would have immediately rejected as illogical. That same logic explains why so many people report having sudden ideas to solve a problem right upon waking, or even in the middle of the night after going to sleep with no solution in sight. It's not coincidence or mystical inspiration. It's the direct result of a brain that worked on the problem all night, using different rules from the ones it uses while awake. There is yet another function of REM sleep that is crucial and rarely explained with the attention it deserves: emotional processing. During this phase, a brain structure called the amygdala, the processing center for fear and intense emotions, becomes especially active, while regions associated with rational thought lower their activity. That combination allows for something curious: reliving emotionally charged memories, but without the chemical stress discharge you felt the first time they occurred. Good sleep, in that sense, works almost like a form of involuntary nightly therapy. It allows you to process what you experienced emotionally during the day
without the full weight of the original reaction. It is one of the reasons why, after several consecutive nights of poor sleep, negative emotions feel more intense, harder to control, and closer to the surface than usual. It isn't a weakness of character. It is, literally, a brain that wasn't given time to process what it felt.
Studies show something even more specific. Sleep-deprived individuals react with greater emotional intensity to neutral or mildly narrative images compared to people who slept normally. It is almost as if sleep deprivation strips the brain of the filter that normally moderates the intensity of your reactions. Everything feels bigger, more urgent, and more threatening than it actually is. And that everything feels bigger isn't a simple subjective perception. It can be measured in the activity of the amygdala itself through magnetic resonance imaging. So the next time you feel unusually irritable, sensitive, or on the verge of tears over something relatively minor, it's worth asking yourself an honest question before looking for more complicated explanations. How many hours did you sleep, and how well, over the last 2 or 3 nights? What happens if you don't sleep? Now that you know everything that happens each night, cleanup, memory archiving, creative problem solving, emotional processing, let's talk about what happens when you take that away from the brain. In 1964, a high school student named Randy Gardner conducted a science fair project that today would be considered dangerous, staying awake for as long as possible under supervision. He reached a total of 264 consecutive hours without sleep, nearly 11 full days. The documented effects during that period were progressive and alarming: extreme irritability, serious concentration and memory issues, paranoia, and hallucinations. He even mistook himself for a famous football player and experienced episodes known as microsleeps, brief blackouts of consciousness lasting just a few seconds, during which the brain forces itself into sleep, even if only for an instant, without the person consciously perceiving it. A sleep researcher from Stanford University, William Dement, closely monitored much of the experiment and described how, toward the final days, Gardner could barely complete simple cognitive tasks, suffering short-term memory lapses so severe that he forgot what he was doing mid-sentence. And yet, in a detail that surprised the researchers themselves, his basic vital signs, blood pressure, temperature, remained surprisingly stable throughout the process. This led the scientific community to realize that the most dangerous effects of sleep deprivation aren't necessarily those visible on a routine physical exam, but rather those that occur silently within brain function itself. That last fact is perhaps the most terrifying part of this entire video. When the body goes long enough without sleep, the brain begins forcibly stealing fragments of sleep without permission, regardless of what you are doing at that moment, even in the most dangerous documented cases, while driving a vehicle. And there is something even more important to learn from Randy Gardner's case. Even after recovering lost sleep, he slept nearly 14 consecutive hours at the end of the experiment, and then gradually returned to his normal routine. The scientists who studied him found that certain subtle effects on mood and cognition took longer to disappear than anyone expected. The so-called sleep debt is not paid off in a single long night, as many believe. The brain needs several complete, consecutive cycles to fully rebuild what it lost. This has a direct implication for almost anyone reading or listening to this. The modern habit of sleeping little during the week and trying to make up for it on the weekend with 10 or 12 hours of sleep does not work as a real compensation. It helps, certainly, but it does not fully reverse the accumulated deficit in brain cleaning, memory consolidation, and emotional processing from the previous days. The unforgiving disease. And here we finally return to the disease we started this video with: fatal familial insomnia. It is an extremely rare prion disease caused by an inheritable genetic mutation with an autosomal dominant pattern, meaning that inheriting a single copy of the altered gene from one parent is enough to develop it. This mutation causes a normal brain protein, known as the prion protein, to misfold and accumulate, progressively damaging a specific region called the thalamus, responsible, among other things, for regulating the sleep-wake cycle. It was formally described for the first time in medical literature in 1986, following the study of an Italian family whose complete pedigree, with records dating back to the 19th century, allowed researchers to trace the disease across entire generations. Years later, studies published in top-tier medical journals confirmed that it was indeed a prion disease, the same family of disorders that includes, for example, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Symptoms usually appear between the ages of 20 and 70, with an average around age 40. They start with mild insomnia that relentlessly progresses, difficulty sleeping, then near total inability, accompanied by tachycardia, excessive sweating, high blood pressure, loss of memory and motor coordination, and in many cases, hallucinations and episodes of confusion that doctors describe as states of dream-like stupor, a sort of half-awake state where the person seems to act out fragments of dreams while technically awake, never achieving real restorative sleep. To this day, the disease has no known cure. Treatment is limited to palliative care, aimed at relieving symptoms and supporting the individual and their family through the process. The progression from the onset of first symptoms to death averages 18 months, although cases ranging from a few months to several years have been documented. What kills in fatal familial insomnia isn't directly the lack of sleep itself, but rather the progressive damage to the thalamus caused by the genetic mutation. But the practical outcome is exactly what opened this video. A person who, step by step, is completely stripped of the ability to perform everything we just explained. Cleaning the brain, consolidating memory, processing emotions, solving problems while dreaming, and whose body, without that nightly process, begins to fail irreversibly, organ by organ, system by system. It is, in a sense, the most extreme and cruel proof of everything we have discussed in this video. When the brain completely loses access to sleep, it doesn't just get tired, it shuts down, system by system, until it can no longer sustain life. For medicine, it is also one of the most valuable natural models for understanding exactly how much the entire human body depends on that nightly process that most of us take completely for granted. Why should this matter to you tonight? You don't need an extremely rare prion disease to feel milder, yet very real, versions of everything we've just discussed. Every night you sleep less than your body needs, your brain's cleaning system works fewer hours than it should, leaving a bit more metabolic waste accumulated than it ought to. Every night your sleep is interrupted before completing its cycles, your memory consolidates worse, your emotions remain slightly less processed, and your ability to solve problems creatively diminishes without you noticing right away. This isn't a preachy warning to go to bed earlier. It is, literally, the description of a biological process your brain needs to run in full every single night to be able to do tomorrow what it did today without failing. Think about everything we covered. A cleaning system that without sufficient deep sleep leaves metabolic waste accumulating year after year. An archiving system that, without full cycles, leaves your memories half saved. A REM sleep phase that, when interrupted night after night, leaves you with less capacity to solve problems creatively and less ability to process what you feel. And at the cruelest possible extreme, a real disease demonstrating in the harshest way imaginable what happens when that process disappears entirely. The body simply becomes unable to sustain itself. The next time you decide to steal another hour from your sleep to watch a show, finish a task, or simply because you aren't sleepy yet, remember what you are asking your brain to skip that night. Its cleaning shift, its memory archiving, its emotional processing, and its nightly idea workshop. Your brain does not rest while you sleep. It works. And the only real question is how much time, each night, you are willing to give it to finish that job.